right away you can tell like this person is special. Emily Rieflin has impacted more kids at Salem High School than I think just about any other high school kid that I've ever met. She was up here on this platform a few years ago talking as a high school kid. She then became a wildlife leader for us as she was a high school student. At the same time, she was bringing like the whole band to Young Life Club. And then she goes away to college and she becomes a Young Life leader in Harrisonburg, at Harrisonburg High School, and she'll tell you more about that. She's a phenomenal person. She's an amazing leader. I think God is going to use this young lady's life in ways that we can only imagine and dream of and hope for. And so I'm very excited that she's going to come and she's going to share with you briefly about her experience with Young Life, what God has done through her being a leader. And to me, this is coming full circle. Like, she has come from being a wildlife student to being a Young Life kid to being a wildlife leader here to being a college leader, and hopefully someday I know she'll be in ministry somehow, either as a missionary or a Young Life staff person or both, and I believe that God has great things for her. So I would like you to give a big Salem welcome to Emily Rieflin. Come on up, Emily.
Good evening. Thank you. So like Jeff said, thank you. My name's Emily, and I grew up here in Salem. I'm at Bridgewater College now, and I'm a senior there. So I grew up here in Salem. I was born at Roanoke Carleton Hospital, which is in Roanoke by the Roanoke Star. And I graduated from Salem in 2015. And so every family outing that we ever take to celebrate anything, we go to Mac and Bob's, if you guys are Mac and Bob's fans. And like Jeff said, I was in the marching band in high school, and so every Friday night we were at a football game. So hopefully you can relate to something there on some level. So I grew up going to church, and I would say that I had a relationship with Jesus before I even knew what wildlife or Young Life or anything like that was. But I got started in wildlife when I was in 8th grade. So 7-8 years ago, I was in 8th grade, and wildlife had just started that year at Andrew Lewis Middle School. And so I had heard about wildlife through Mr. Chester's Friday morning Bible study, but I also heard that they made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with their feet. And so I thought that was a little weird and probably really gross, and didn't really think it had anything to do with Jesus, and so I didn't really go to anything. But then in January of that year, I heard about Winter Weekend, which is the weekend trip to Young Life Camp that you just heard about. And I don't really remember why I went or what prompted me to go or want even to go, but I ended up going. And that weekend there were 5 girls that went. And that's where I met Kayla Fuller, who many of you probably know. And Kayla would later become my Young Life leader at Salem High School. But so that year, Kayla was a freshman at Roanoke College, and she hadn't even been placed at a high school. She probably hadn't even gone through leader training yet, but she was gracious and willing enough to come on that weekend with us and lead 5 crazy middle school girls on the weekend of their lives. And I remember thinking that Kayla was the coolest person in the world. I remember thinking that the swing was the scariest thing in the world, and just having a blast at Young Life Camp. And that weekend kind of started my Young Life trajectory, but ironically enough, I came back and still didn't go to Wildlife Club. I don't think I ever went once in 8th grade, so I just went to the weekend. But then I got into high school, and so upperclassmen in band invited me to come to Young Life Club. And so the very first Monday of that year, I said, no, I've got a history project, I'm not going. Because I thought school was, it is important. I thought it was the absolute most important thing at the time. And so the week after, I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go. And so I ended up going, and I loved it. I thought the games were so fun. I wanted to be in every single one up at the front. I thought that the songs were fun even, and I thought that was weird that they were fun, but loved that. And so I went every single Monday night. There was no chance that I was gonna miss club. And my first 2 years I thought, okay, this is really about me being up in front of it, like in front playing the games. That's what club is about. But like I said, Kayla became my leader at Salem High School all 4 years that I was there. And I have a picture of us at her graduation. So Kayla at that point was graduating college, obviously. I was a junior. And so it was so fun to be invited into her life and to be able to go to her college graduation and get to celebrate her there. But her college graduation was not the only way that Kayla invited me into her life and that Kayla spent her life with me. I remember very distinctly, I was either a freshman or a sophomore. We went geocaching together, which if you don't know what that is, you basically have a data phone and you go scavenger hunting in like outside. And so we went like behind the pig at that barbecue place where everybody paints a pig, went all over town. Scavenger hunting together, which is weird for a college student to do with a freshman in high school. But we did it, and I thought she was so cool because she had a data phone, and at that point I only had one of those weird QWERTY keypad phones, which is just weird to think about, that 7 years ago there weren't data phones really. So that's one way that Kayla spent her life with me. I also remember as a freshman in high school, I had one of those typical stupid high school relationships. And Kayla loved me through that, and she had grace for me, but also had truth for me in the midst of that. And looking back on that, like that was a huge part of me coming to know the Lord truly and to really follow Him. Also, Kayla took me to Starbucks, and she would buy me Starbucks even on her broke college student, budget. And at Starbucks, Starbucks outside of Kroger, she would ask me really hard questions, like, how are you and your relationship with Jesus? And I grew up going to church, but I don't know that I had ever been asked that question that directly to my face in a situation where I had to answer. And questions like that made me squirm, because I didn't know. I was like, I don't even really know what that means, I think. I follow Jesus, I have a relationship with Him, but I don't know. And so through my first 2 years of high school especially, Kayla really showed me what it looks like to follow Jesus and what it looks like to really live out your relationship with Him rather than just going to church. Kayla taught me to study my Bible, taught me to pray, taught me to memorize scripture, and she challenged me, and kind of through the journey of Young Life, challenged me to serve others, to serve my friends, and not to serve myself. And so then, like Jeff said, as a junior, I had the opportunity to lead Wild Life. And so I had no clue what I was doing. I realized that middle schoolers are kind of crazy. And I came to club, did all those things. I couldn't go to the school because I was in school, but got to know some middle schoolers, and I got to help out with the Bible study at church with a bunch of middle schoolers. We did movie nights together as leaders where we had like 30 or 40 middle school girls and we ate way too many sweets. And I even remember taking some middle schoolers to a haunted corn maze, which in hindsight was maybe not a smart idea because I was terrified myself, and so then I have 7 middle schoolers with me who are also terrified, and so I ended up piggybacking them out of the maze as this guy was like chasing us with a chainsaw. So lesson noted, don't take middle schoolers to a haunted corn maze. So many of them now are juniors and seniors, and some have even graduated, and a lot of them are following Jesus, and some of them even want to lead Young Life in college. And so I know specifically of one girl who is up at JMU, which is where I am, and she wants to go through leader training next semester. And it's really cool to see, like, Wild Life started when I was in 8th grade with 5 girls on the Wild Life trip, and now their Wild Life trip is full in Camp Silent Night in like 30 minutes, and it's 60 plus kids that are going, and you heard there's 50 or 60 kids studying the Bible every other week. So it's cool to see that ministry has boomed in Wild Life and Young Life over the past 8 years. So Young Life in Salem has played a fundamental role in my relationship with Jesus, and I went from being a church-going, rule-following disciple, or rule-following Christian, to a people-loving and Jesus-following disciple. And so I would say without Young Life, I don't think I would have understood what it means to truly follow Jesus and to share him with others. And so now, I have the opportunity to lead Young Life in Harrisonburg, at Harrisonburg High School. And it's my 3.5 year leading, and so it has been anything but easy. I think it's actually been the hardest thing that I've ever done in my whole life. So I have a picture of our summer camp trip when I was a sophomore. And this shows you a little bit of what Harrisonburg High School is like. There are over 58 languages spoken and represented in the school. The school is 1,800 students, so it's the size of the college that I attend, which is kind of crazy. White is a minority in the school, and 7 out of 10 students in the student body are English language learners, which means that English is not their native language. So 3 out of 10 students speak English natively. And so tonight, I want to tell you about my friend that I met as a sophomore. I actually met her through a friend of a friend, both of whom are high schoolers, and that goes to show you that this is not a girl that I sought out. This is not a relationship that I tried to find. I really firmly believe that God picked her up and put her in my life, and that it was completely the Lord's doing. So her name is Isaiah, and so her friend came to club and said, I have a friend that I want to bring, and that friend said, I have a friend I want to bring, and that friend brought Isaiah. And so I met her at club and then was at the school the next morning, and I saw her and I said, hey, like, what do you think of Young Life? What do you think of club? And she said, Miss, it's pretty lame. So all the students at Harrisonburg High School call anyone of authority Miss or Mister. It's really weird. They think it's normal. It's not. I really don't understand it. But that is Isaiah in a nutshell. And so I have a picture of her from our fall weekend trip that year. So 2 weeks after I met her, I got to bring Isaiah to the fall weekend, and we went out and fundraised, and I learned that she is sassy, and she is hard, and she is has barriers all over her heart. And so she got to come to fall weekend, and that's kind of what set our relationship on the trajectory that it's on. But I don't even remember, over the last 3 years that I've known her, I don't even remember all the things that we've done together, or really how we've gotten to where we are in our relationship. But I have spent the last 3 years of my life pouring into her, spending time with her, similar to how Kayla took me geocaching and bought me Starbucks. I've spent time with her. It's been multiple times a week in many different ways. And over time, she's begun to trust me. Her walls have come down. And she's seen that I truly care and love for her. So she comes to club and campaigners, and I even started bringing her to church with me, and even to the small group in my church that I attend. And so she comes to all 4 of those on a pretty regular basis. So that's already 4 times a week that we get to see each other. But then beyond that, I have helped her apply for jobs in Harrisonburg. I have chased after her dog when she escaped from the house. I ran all over her neighborhood. I have bought her Chinese food at the mall, which is the classic Harrisonburg High School place to go eat. And I have a picture of us taking selfies at the mall, if we can get that picture up. Yeah, that was the one. Yep. So this was us at the Harrisonburg High School, or at the Harrisonburg Mall. And it's funny, I mean, it's a funny picture, but it's cool to see, like, she followed me even in that. Like, she trusted me enough to take a funny picture like that. And so that's cool. I also have driven her to doctor's appointments. I've tutored her in Algebra 1, so she would pass the SOL test. And I have a picture of her opening a bank account at the Harrisonburg BB&T, so we opened a joint bank account together. And now I'm getting to read a money skills book with her, because she comes from a family that lives in poverty, and she's never learned what it looks like to manage money or how to do that responsibly. So those are all ways that we've lived life. She's also a senior in high school, so we've lived the past 3 years in a similar kind of life stage together. And so when I was a sophomore, and she was a sophomore, I wanted so badly for her to come to summer camp because I knew that she would get to hear the gospel in its entirety, and I wanted for her to know Jesus. And so as a sophomore, I remember begging on my knees in tears that the Lord would bring her to summer camp and that she would come to meet him. And that sounds really spiritual, but it's not, because I really am bad at prayer, and I never cry. And so this was God moving in me, I think on her behalf. So we went door-to-door fundraising, and she came to summer camp, and she had a blast, and I broke up a fight between her and one of our campaigner kids, so that was good, and I pushed her around in a wheelchair all week, and it was the hardest week that I've ever lived. But we got to process the gospel together. She got to hear the gospel in its entirety, and we got to sit down and talk about that one-on-one. And at the end of that week, she said to me in the Young Life lingo, "I want to turn my chair around." And that means I want to start a relationship with Jesus. And so at the time, I was like, there's no way. Like, this is not real. It can't be. That's impossible. It's too far-fetched. And it's been 2 years, and I still am not really sure if it was a true heart change that she had that week. There are times that I see fruit in her life, and I think, yeah, like she knows Jesus. We have really hard conversations about what it means to follow Jesus, about the cost of following him, and what that looks like in her daily life. And she's not the same person that she was. She's not nearly as sassy. She's still a little sassy, but she's not nearly as sassy, and she is not as hardened. She is really sweet and cares about people deeply. But at other times, I wonder if she's heard anything that I've said, because when she gets around her friends, she will flick me off 4 times in the same night. And she says the N-word quite frequently when she's with her friends. And so there are times that I get discouraged and I think, what is this even for? And about a month ago, I realized that she was taking money out of my wallet. And I was crushed. I was heartbroken. I felt a kind of betrayal that I had never felt before, and emotions that I had never felt before. And I prayed about it, and I decided to confront her about it. And so I did, and she denied it flat to my face. And she went home that day, and we didn't talk for 2 weeks. I texted her, and I invited her to club and campaigners and church and small group, and she didn't even open my messages. And so I was convinced that our friendship was over. I was certain that we would never talk again, and that I was left wondering, like, okay, the last 3 years, what are they for? Why have I done this? I have thrown them down the toilet. But 2 weeks later, I got a message from her out of the blue, and it said, "Hey, Emily," and that was it. And I thought, okay, this is either going to be really horrible, and she's going to go off on me, or she's going to apologize. And she did. She apologized. She said, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have taken your money. I shouldn't have done that, and I'm really sorry, and you don't ever have to forgive me, but I just had to come clean to you." And I was floored. I really had never in my wildest dreams imagined that that would happen. I had prayed that God would convict her and show her the right path and show her a path to forgiveness, but I really didn't believe that it would happen. And so I don't know where she is in her relationship with God. And I used to be angry that God wouldn't make it clear. But I've come to terms with the fact that I may never know where she is in her relationship with him, and I may never really understand or know what she truly thinks. She's not a stellar campaigner, and she probably won't lead Young Life when she graduates. And she may never truly follow Jesus. But I know that God called me to her, and I know that he has plans for her. And if I got to be a small part of those plans, I wouldn't change that for the world. And so, in leading Young Life, I have had the opportunity to see some real fruit in some kids' lives who truly do begin a relationship with Jesus and go on to lead Young Life even. I've also had the opportunity to help change kids and families' lives by breaking the cycle of poverty in their lives. And I've had the opportunity to share the gospel with over 60 kids in high school, some of whom respond and may start a relationship with Jesus, and some of whom may never respond and sometimes don't even listen because they'll talk over us during the club talk. And as a leader, I've been stretched, and I've been angry, and I've been pushed, and I've been uncomfortable and discouraged and excited. and all of his emotions, and I've had to throw myself onto God in order to make it through. And if nothing else, I've been faithful to his calling to share the gospel and to make disciples. And I've learned that he is faithful to his promises. And so I share these stories about Kayla loving me and taking me geocaching and buying me Starbucks, and me running after Uzziah, even when she flicks me off 4 times. Because that's what Jesus did. Jesus was relational with people who didn't love him, with people who did love him. And so I believe in Young Life because I believe in Jesus and in his relational nature. Young Life brings lost kids to the feet of Jesus each and every day. And at the same time, it brings leaders and committee and staff and even donors to his feet each and every day. Thank you for listening.